The handcuffs clicked shut around weathered wrists as tourists gasped and pulled out their phones. "You're under arrest for trespassing in a restricted security zone," Officer Martinez barked, shoving the old man against the patrol car. "Feeding these mangy strays is creating a public disturbance." The man didn't resist. His worn baseball cap fell to the concrete, revealing silver hair and deep lines carved by decades of sun. Dog food scattered across the sidewalk like confetti at a funeral. "Crazy old fool," someone muttered from the crowd. "Doesn't he know this is a government building?" The dogs whimpered, pressing against the chain-link fence that separated them from their only friend. Their ribs showed through matted fur. Their eyes held the kind of desperation that comes from too many empty nights. The booking photo made the evening news. Channel 7 ran it with the headline, "Vagrant arrested for harassing wildlife near federal building." His mugshot showed a man who looked broken. Stubble covered his hollow cheeks. His eyes stared at nothing, empty as the pockets of his threadbare jacket. "Look at this guy," the anchor said with barely concealed disgust. 68 years old, no fixed address, multiple citations for loitering. Now he's endangering public safety by attracting wild animals to a sensitive area. The comments section exploded with rage. "Throw away the key. These homeless people are out of control. Waste of taxpayer money." The old man sat in his cell, listening to the fluorescent lights buzz overhead. A cockroach scurried across the floor. Outside, he could hear the dogs howling in the distance. By morning, the story had gone viral. Number "Arrest the Vagrant" was trending on social media. Someone had filmed the arrest on their phone, and the video played on repeat across every news station. "I was just trying to eat my lunch," complained Sandra Morrison, a federal employee who worked in the building. "These diseased animals were everywhere because of him. My daughter has asthma. What if she'd been bitten?" A petition demanding his prosecution gathered 10,000 signatures in 6 hours. The mayor held a press conference. "We cannot allow our city to be overrun by vagrants who show no respect for law and order. This individual will face the full consequences of his actions." The old man's court-appointed lawyer barely looked up from his paperwork. "My client has no prior felony convictions," he said mechanically. "We'll plead guilty to the misdemeanor charges." The judge's gavel echoed through the nearly empty courtroom. Only a few reporters remained, already typing their stories on phones. 60 days in county jail, plus community service, Judge Williams announced. "Maybe this will teach you to respect our laws." The old man's shoulders sagged. He'd grown thinner in the 3 days since his arrest. His hands shook as the bailiff led him away. That night, Channel 7 ran a follow-up story. They dug deeper into his background. Unemployed for 8 years, lived in a rundown studio apartment that smelled like cigarettes and defeat. No family, no friends, no one to post bail. "This is what happens when we fail to address the mental health crisis in our community," the anchor said, shaking her head sadly. "But that doesn't excuse endangering public safety." The dogs at the fence grew skinnier. Their howling kept the office workers awake at night. County jail was worse than the old man had expected. The younger inmates called him Dog Man and laughed when he walked by. The guards treated him like a piece of furniture that had been left in the wrong room. "You got a visitor," Officer Brooks said on his 15th day inside. "Some reporter wants to do a story about you." The old man shook his head. "No visitors." "Your choice, old-timer. But maybe someone should tell your side of the story before you get out and do something stupid again." Through the reinforced glass, he could see the reporter waiting with her camera crew. She looked young, ambitious, hungry for a story that would make her career. He turned away and walked back to his cell. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. The old man almost threw it away, thinking it was another court document or bill collector's threat. But the return address made him pause. Department of Defense, Personnel Records Division. Inside, a government clerk had written, "We are attempting to verify military service records for Thomas Eugene Hartwell. Please respond if you are the individual who served with the 75th Ranger Regiment from 1975-1982. The old man stared at the letter for a long time. His hands trembled as he folded it and put it in his pocket. That night, he dreamed of jungle sounds and voices calling his name. He woke up screaming, and the guard had to check on him. "You okay, Dog Man?" The old man wiped sweat from his forehead. Just a bad dream. The court clerk who processed his release paperwork was new. She looked barely out of college, with earnest eyes and a nameplate that read, Jennifer Kim, Paralegal Intern. Mr. Hartwell? She said, checking his ID against the computer screen. I have a message for you. Someone called asking about your release date. The old man's heart skipped. Who? He didn't leave a name. Just said to tell you, Ranger Tom, that someone was looking for him. She handed him a plastic bag with his belongings. He sounded official, like military. The old man's hands shook as he signed the release forms. The nickname hit him like a punch to the gut. No one had called him that in 40 years. Outside the jail, he walked slowly toward the bus stop. The morning sun felt foreign on his skin. Cars honked as he crossed the street, but he didn't hear them. Someone was looking for Ranger Tom. The black SUV was waiting outside his apartment building. Two men in dress uniforms stood beside it, their posture unmistakably military. The old man stopped walking. Thomas Hartwell? The taller one stepped forward. His chest was covered with ribbons and medals. I'm Colonel Martinez, Fort Bragg. This is Sergeant Major Williams. The old man's throat went dry. I think you have the wrong person. Negative, sir. The colonel's voice was respectful, almost reverent. We've been looking for you for 3 weeks, ever since that video went viral. I don't understand. Sir, may we come up? We have some things we need to discuss. The old man's apartment was a shrine to shame. Empty beer cans lined the windowsill. The furniture was second-hand and threadbare. A small television played local news with the sound off. The colonel looked around but didn't comment. Sir, do you remember Captain James Morrison? He served under you in the Rangers, 1,978 to 1,980. The old man's face went pale. Jimmy Morrison. He was just a kid. 19 years old. That kid is now General Morrison, sir. He runs the Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg. You saved our lives, Colonel Martinez said quietly. All of us. The whole platoon. The old man sat down heavily on his couch. That was a long time ago. Operation Green Light, Cambodia, 1,979. You were the survival instructor. When that helicopter went down, you kept 22 men alive for 6 days in the jungle. No supplies, no communication, no hope. The colonel opened a manila folder. Inside were photographs, commendations, and a letter with official letterhead. You taught us to find water by following animal tracks. You showed us which insects were safe to eat. You built shelters that kept us warm and dry. You set snares that caught enough small game to keep us from starving. The old man's eyes filled with tears. I just did my job. Negative, sir. You did more than that. You were the reason we all made it home to our families. Sergeant Major Williams spoke for the first time. Sir, when we saw that video of you feeding those dogs, we recognized something. The way you moved, the way you assessed the situation, the way you put the needs of those animals above your own safety. That's when we knew it was you, the colonel continued. General Morrison has been trying to locate you for 20 years. He wanted to thank you. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of. The ceremony was held at the federal building where the old man had been arrested. A crowd of several hundred people gathered, including the mayor, the police chief, and every news station in the city. General Morrison himself had flown in from Fort Bragg. He was older now, gray-haired and dignified, but his eyes still held the same intensity the old man remembered from that terrified 19-year-old in the jungle. Ladies and gentlemen, the general said into the microphone, I want to tell you about the man you arrested for feeding stray dogs. The crowd fell silent. His name is Thomas Eugene Hartwell. 43 years ago, he was my survival instructor in the United States Army Rangers. He was the best soldier I ever served with. And the reason I'm alive today. The general's voice broke slightly. In 1979, our helicopter was shot down over Cambodia. We were 19 kids, scared and alone in hostile territory. This man kept us alive for 6 days with nothing but his knowledge and his courage. The old man stood at attention in his new dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest, the Silver Star, the Bronze Star with V device. the Combat Infantryman Badge. Awards that had been lost in bureaucratic shuffles decades ago, now restored to their rightful place. He taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest, the general continued. It's about taking care of each other. It's about making sure no one gets left behind, even if that someone is just a hungry dog. The crowd erupted in applause. The old man's eyes found the fence where the dogs used to wait. They were gone now, adopted by families who had heard the real story. But he could still remember their faces, their desperate hope when they saw him coming with food. The mayor stepped forward with a key to the city. The police chief formally apologized. The reporters who had mocked him now scrambled for interviews. But the old man only had eyes for the 22 men in uniform who had come to honor him. His boys, his soldiers, his family. They formed a receiving line, each one shaking his hand, each one saying the same thing. "Thank you, Ranger Tom. Thank you for bringing us home." As the sun set behind the federal building, the old man finally understood. He hadn't been feeding stray dogs. He'd been feeding his own pack, taking care of his own family. Just like he'd always done. The last person in line was a young soldier, barely 20 years old. He looked nervous, excited, honored to be there. "Sir," he said, "I just graduated from Ranger School. My instructor told me to find you and say thank you. He said you wrote the book on survival training." The old man smiled for the first time in years. "What's your name, son?" "Private Morrison, sir. James Morrison III." The old man's heart swelled. "You Jimmy's boy?" "Yes, sir. My grandfather talks about you all the time. He said you were the greatest soldier he ever knew." The old man looked out at the gathering crowd, at the cameras, at the ceremony that had transformed his shame into honor. But what he saw was simpler than all of that. He saw a pack, a family, a group of creatures who had found each other in the wilderness and decided to survive together. "No, son," he said quietly. "I was just a man who learned that taking care of others is the only thing that matters." The dogs were gone, but their lesson remained. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with kindness. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who feed the hungry, comfort the afraid, and stand guard over those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes the man everyone calls a vagrant is really a guardian angel in disguise. The ceremony ended, but the old man's story was just beginning. He had found his pack again. He had found his purpose. He had come home.